Hello, Internet. Welcome to episode 325 of the Assorted Calibers podcast. The second amendment podcast is a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd, and with me always, she is the greatest hostess in the entire world. She is wonderful. She is nice. She is kind. She's compassionate. She is patient. Erin Paulette. How you doing?
Yeah, I got a bit of a sore throat now after doing that Dr. Girlfriend impression.
You're going to have to subscribe to our Patreon to hear an ACP blooper reel, and I promise that one will be showing up very, very soon.
Okay, so other than that, well, the Christmas decorating is still going on, even though Mom has promised to dial it back, and she has. But, well, you know, we're both getting a lot slower. I've got the arthritis in my back, and Mom has all her health problems because she's 85, so it's taking us longer. We don't have the tree up yet, and so at one point I laughingly observed, "Do you think we'll get the tree up in time for Christmas?" And Mom deadpan said, "I don't know." So that's going to be interesting.
We literally we've just been so busy with all sorts of other stuff, and I'm not gonna miss the show, but we're actually my wife has some frequent flyer miles that she needs to burn up, so we're actually gonna go for a long weekend in Vegas next week, and so I'll be back in time for recording, but I'll disappear for a couple of days and all that. So she's like, "Well, we're gonna be doing this, we're gonna be doing that. There's an event here doing this," and it's one of those like, so the one time that we have to put the tree up is the weekend before Christmas, and my parents are traveling, and so they usually stay with us and all that, and they're not going to be there. She's like, "There's not going to be anybody here at all of that," and I'm just like, "We don't have to put up the tree." My daughter was a little bit disappointed, and then she's just like, but then she's just like, "Well, but we'll still have the presents." Yes, that's fine. And my parents are they're going on a cruise. They're coming back like just before Christmas, and they got a bunch of stuff that they need to do before everything shuts down for Christmas. So they can't stick around. So they got to run back to Maine, and so my daughter was like, "But we could have Christmas when we get back before we leave, and then you could come up to Maine, and then you can have another Christmas." She's like, "So I'm gonna have 3 Christmases?" Yes. Okay, I'm cool with that.
So, because I know everyone loves hearing me talk about the Florida weather, we had some really nice, cool weather, and I actually had to put on a coat, not my parka. That's saved for when it gets down below 50. But you know, I had a sweatshirt, and then I put my German Flecktarn coat over it, and so I was enjoying the cooler weather, and I wore that yesterday, in fact, and now today it was in the 70s again, so that's what it's like in Florida. Everyone wants to come to Florida in the summer. Don't, because it's super hot, and there's enough humidity that it's like walking into a sauna. Don't do it. If you're from the north, you will melt. Instead, come now, when it's nice, and the bugs are gone, or dormant, or dead, or whatever. So yeah, come now, come January, come February. March and April are a bit more, but that'll work. But by the time it hits May, don't bother. But I'm just telling y'all, Yankees, now's the time, because you'll see the Floridians who are huddled in coats, and you'll be like, "This is shorts weather, it's fine."
Oh yeah, me growing up, February vacation was firmly Florida vacation. And it's especially nice because, like, Maine was a frozen wasteland. I remember literally us getting back from Florida one February vacation, and my dad having to go over to the neighbor's house to borrow to borrow a shovel, not a snow shovel. It was like a coal shovel, so he could chip the ice away from the garage door, so we could get it open, so we could actually get into our house. Like just everything was just completely glazed over with ice.
Why were you trying to get into your house through the garage?
That was, I guess this might have been one of the times when my mom lost the key and then found it later just in another pocket.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember the full story, but yeah, there was, but either way, the garage, we got in through the garage door, and but the garage door was frozen to the driveway, and so it was a production. And it was especially a production because we had just been wearing shorts and t-shirts for the previous week. But yes, Florida in the late fall to mid spring. For highly recommend. Yep. All right, well, Aaron, we got a pile of stories here, so I think we should. I think we should get to work here.
Okay, so let's talk about the guy in the jacket, coat, whatever. I'm trying to make a logical segue here, but the UHC shooter, because he was dressed for winter. Yeah. No, this was one of those ones of when it happened. I went, well, I mean, I am not going to condone or at all, revel in the murder of somebody. That's not great. And I'm not making any judgment calls on this guy. I know that there's some people that have been very, very pleased that he was killed. And I don't agree with that at all. Maybe he was a terrible person, but that's not the way we handle these things in America. Well, what I understand is that I don't think it was because the shooter had a problem with him specifically. I think the shooter had a problem with him because he was the head of a health insurance company that, among other things, used artificial intelligence to decide whether or not people got treatment. And shell casings found at the scene had the words deny, defend, and depose written on them. And you don't go to the effort to write words on shell casings unless you're trying to make a statement.
Yeah, he was definitely trying to send a message. And I was kind of thinking, well, this is happening, and it happened. What is it? It happened last Tuesday. It was sometime right after we finished recording. I'm like, oh, good. We'll have plenty of time for everything to kind of salt out. And he's been on the lam the entire time. And as of our recording, they have just arrested somebody, and they've named him. So I suspect strongly that this is the person, because generally they will say person of interest, unnamed, if they're not pretty sure who it is. But essentially, this guy was walking into a hotel room that was holding a conference. And
this guy being the victim.
The victim. Yeah. What is his name? I don't feel like giving the name of the other guy.
Brian Thompson.
Brian Thompson, yeah. So Brian Thompson was walking into this hotel. The guy comes out between two parked cars. He has a suppressed pistol, fires. I think he managed to get off 3 shots, though the gun did not cycle on any of them. So, which is an interesting point. Some people suspected that it might have been one of the bolt action type pistols, like a well rod, but I think that the videos out there showing, you can see gas coming out of the ejection port, and the slide actually, you can see, if you zoom in, you can see the slide is actually moving. I got Ian Runkle's video is in the show notes, and he did a really, really good breakdown of the video and really kind of zoomed in as best he could on it. And I think it really showed a semi-auto pistol that did not have a Nielsen device, which is, for those that don't know, with a Browning action, the barrel is moving with the slide, and if the barrel is suddenly extremely heavy because there's a suppressor on the end of it, that can throw off the spring dynamics and make the gun short stroke. And so there's a little spring-loaded doohickey that you put on the end of the suppressor, so that when you fire, it actually unlocks the gun faster, and therefore compensates for the weight of the suppressor with spring tension.
Well, Runkle also theorized that perhaps the shooter was using subsonics, and therefore they didn't have enough power to fully cycle the slide.
Yeah, I think I'm going to throw that one out. I'm trying to remember if Ian specifically mentioned that in the video.
He did, because I watched it today.
Yeah, but did he mention the fact that as a general rule, the subsonics are either you can get any bullet weight downloaded down to subsonics, but as a general rule, if you're just running suppressor food, you get the 148 grain 9 millimeters, and those will be running just under the speed of sound. And number one, those should have enough oomph to them to cycle to cycle an action. But also, as a general rule, it's harder to find full metal jacket ammo, and he was using ball ammo in this gun. And so
the answer to your question, Weer'd, is no. Ian Runkle did not descend to that level of gun autism.
Okay. Well, thank you for your backhanded compliment, Aaron. But yeah, so I doubt he was using subsonics, but who knows? I personally think that the fact that the gun wasn't running right with it and all that says to me that he had never shot the gun paired with a suppressor before, which makes me think that it was not a legal suppressor, which there are two really easy ways to get one. One is 3D printing one, and the other one is go on Temu or Alibaba or some of those other, sites of like scammy stuff and buy one of the inline fuel filters or solvent traps or any of the other names for, we just made a suppressor, but we didn't drill all the holes in it. And you just drill a couple holes and you've got a suppressor now. And so was my suspicion. And
conventional wisdom on the Facebooks, and we all know how good that is saying that it's a 3D printed suppressor, but I haven't heard anything definitive.
Yeah, I will say Mr. Guns and Gear, and the links in the show notes, has an image of the alleged shooter's gun, and I'll say Mr. Guns and Gear has he was one of the first people to post a picture of the gun used by the Butler, Pennsylvania attempted assassination of Donald Trump. He was one of the first ones to post a picture of that guy's gun from evidence, and he also had some information from the guy in Florida who attempted to shoot at Trump with that Bubba SKS. But yeah, and this one appears to be a 3D printed Glock lower with various Matt from Geeks Gadgets and Guns mentioned that it looks like a Brownell slide and then a threaded barrel, suppressor height sights. But so this was likely a home built Glock using a 3D printer, and so therefore if he's got a 3D printed lower, either he bought it from somebody or more than likely he printed it himself. And I think they said that he had an engineering background, so he was a nerdy guy, the killer.
I haven't heard anything about that yet, but I haven't done a deep dive into who he is. The only thing I'm hearing is that he's got a very Italian first and last name, and the reason they got him is because he was wearing a very distinctive outfit, and prior to the shooting, he had his mask off, and he was flirting with somebody, I think, at a McDonald's.
Yeah. Overall, I'm going to say I'm surprised he got as far as he did. Obviously, he was on the lam for almost a week, and he really did not do he definitely didn't make it easy on the cops, but he also really wasn't a ghost about it. Like they recovered the Starbucks that you said where they got a photograph of his face. He was also drinking a coffee and eating a snack there, and the police went to the trash and actually found and retrieved those items. So I assume they got his prints from that. There was a lot of information on how he got there and where he was coming from and all of that. But still, it wasn't until a McDonald's employee recognized his face while he was getting some food in Altoona, Pennsylvania, home of the Altoona pizza. If you know, you know. And they arrested him, and he had the gun and suppressor on him. So it's not like this guy was doing a real bang up job of covering his tracks.
So here's my question, and it's part rhetorical, part predictive. Usually after a shooting like this is when we hear calls for more gun control, outlawing suppressors, things like that. Keeping in mind, of course, that suppressors are already illegal in New York. But at the same time, I'm hearing a lot of the usual suspects who are actually cheering that this guy was killed because he did things that they didn't like, such as the aforementioned deny, delay, defend. And so I'm curious, really, what's going to happen. Is the hatred of a capitalist insurance company enough to overcome their hatred of guns? So,
yeah. Yep, we will see, and we will be reporting on that as it goes. But yeah, this certainly has an interesting angle, given that it appears to be 3D printed. I would strongly suspect it's going to be a 3D printed suppressor, this definitely could go through. But also, it was in New York City. How could you do that? Guns are banned there, so we will. We will see. It also, Ian Runkle mentioned that he definitely appeared to be someone who, while he definitely didn't shoot that gun and suppressor combination before, because otherwise he would have realized that it doesn't cycle, he likely has shot that gun before, because despite the fact that he was sneaking up and murdering somebody, he very, very calmly and quickly was able to get the gun to cycle and keep the gun shooting. So that's someone that's just bought the gun the weekend before, or stuff like that, and has never spent any range time. Suddenly the gun short strokes. They may not have any idea what's going on, why they're pulling the trigger, and it's not shooting.
Yeah, I don't know if he did a full tap rack bang, but he definitely knew that when the gun didn't work, he needed to cycle the slide manually in order to chamber the next round. So yeah, I agree with you. This is clearly somebody who shot before. How much training he's had, that's a different issue.
Yeah, there were some live rounds recovered at the scene, so likely he did eject a live round. Could have, like, I've heard some people note, because the slide was definitely moving, could have noted that possibly the slide wasn't going into full battery, so therefore when he was racking it, he was ejecting a live round when it was happening. I'm not sure, but either way, he is in custody, and we will see what more information that we have, and what political aftershocks there are from this. And speaking of political aftershocks, there's another story that I think we reported on this one, didn't we? The Daniel Petty's Subway
Penny. And I don't think we have. I don't think we've touched this because it didn't involve firearms.
Yeah, it didn't involve firearms, but it is a self-defense case, or really defense of others. And so the fact that he was charged with murder, essentially, Daniel Penny was riding on a subway in New York City. There was a homeless person who has a number of issues, has been arrested a number of times, had pending charges against him. This person had a really checkered past, and he was threatening people on the subway. Penny got up and challenged him. They ended up scuffling. He got the guy in a chokehold and got him to submit. Some other passengers also helped out. They got to a stop. Police showed up, took him into custody, and the man passed away. And then Daniel Penny was charged with murder.
Well, the sticking point here is that he apparently kept him in a chokehold for 6 minutes, which is well after he passed out.
Yeah, and there was some evidence released in the case. I didn't follow it too closely, so I'm not going to dive too deep into the facts. But I do believe it was presented that he did not die of asphyxiation in the train car, but in fact was alive when he was taken to the hospital by EMTs. And there was an argument made. I'll just leave it at that instead of making anything definitive, but there was an argument made that his death may have been complicated by some of the substances that he had been using that day. But either way, the news of the day is that Penny has been acquitted of all charges. So that is good. The court case was, they dropped some of the charges before the jury was sent out to make a decision, in hoping to get at least a lesser conviction. But in fact, he has been fully acquitted of this. And for all, I guess not all accounts, because again, you are allowed to put somebody into a chokehold, just like you are allowed to shoot somebody if they are attacking you or attacking somebody else, but you are not allowed to shoot somebody after they have fallen and are no longer a threat or are turning and running away. And so in the event that he had completely gone limp and was unconscious, that should have been a point for him to release the chokehold, or at least relax it enough to allow him to breathe normally.
Well, I'm willing to extend some grace here, and here's my reasoning. There's such a thing called the Good Samaritan law, or regulation, or you get what I'm saying here, and that is, if you are not a trained EMT and someone is dying, they've got a heart attack, they're bleeding to death, whatever, and you try to provide first aid to keep them alive, and you fail, or worse, you make things worse, you aren't going to be tried for negligence because it's recognized you're not a professional, you were trying to help, you were trying to be a good Samaritan. But that law obviously doesn't apply to people who are professionals, like EMTs and firefighters. And so in this regard, I think we can extend a similar reasoning. We know that Penny was a Marine. We don't know how extensively he trained in hand-to-hand. I haven't seen anything that indicates, he was, a professional at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or whatever. And so I'm willing to extend the possibility that this is a man who thought that violence was about to happen, and so he had adrenaline running through him. And when you are in a situation like that, you can miss a lot of cues, and you get time dilation and other things happening. And this is something that has been documented for people who have been in shooting situations, both self-defense and military. There are things like tunnel vision. You can't hear anything, or sometimes all your senses are on fire and you can hear everything. And so I'm willing to accept that in the heat of the moment with the adrenaline, he didn't realize that the guy had stopped moving. He didn't realize it had been 6 minutes. But what I am saying is that if he had been a professional, like a police officer who had received extensive training in that regard, that's when you prosecute for negligent homicide.
That is a fair statement. And I will also note that the pictures that you have of him holding the person in a chokehold, there are multiple people with him helping him restrain this person. He was the one who challenged him and fought back, but once the fighting had happened, others joined in and helped him out. And so when there's that many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak, it also might be hard to tell, has he stopped moving? Because he may not stop moving, because there are so many people around holding him that he is being moved. So yeah, that is a fair statement, and a jury of his peers has ruled that he is not guilty. So that is good to hear for him, especially since whether or not it's the cleanest of self-defense cases I've ever seen is not, but it is certainly not a really, really bad one. So I'm willing to bet that the jury got this right.
one thing that I thought was very unusual was that when the jury was trying to determine guilt or innocence for the greater charge, second degree murder, they had difficulty determining whether or not he was guilty. It was like a hung jury or something. And so then the judge asked them to deliberate on the lesser charge, and they very quickly came back not guilty on the lesser charge. And
if you're not guilty on the lesser charge, you can't be guilty of the greater one.
Well, that's exactly what I was getting at. But I do find it interesting that, did he commit murder? We don't know. Did he accidentally kill the guy? No, he didn't. And it's more a case of, I don't know what was going on with the jury. And honestly, I wonder if they had been deliberating so long for the second-degree manslaughter, and the judge then orders them to consider the lesser charge of criminally negligent homicide. I wonder how many of them just went, I'm tired. I'm done with this. Let's just agree on something and go home.
Well, also one of the key factors here is, we're sitting back here, reading news articles and things like that, but these jurors are lay people. And so they are highly dependent on jury instructions that will explain what does this charge mean. So therefore, what would be what would justify an acquittal, what would justify a conviction, and all that. And in many cases, especially with some in New York, these jury instructions are horrendously written. So it could be that it was very, very ambiguous on the murder charge. But the manslaughter one was much better, or much more clearly written, at least for their understanding of the case.
That also makes sense.
Yep.
But yeah, after deliberating for a long time about the first one, and they weren't sure, then when asking about the criminally negligent, they deliberated for less than 2 hours.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, moving on to this one's a follow up for last week. We talked about how, after Canada banned, essentially banned handguns in the country. Their violent crime rate has gone up precipitously, and their property crime as well, and all of that. And it turns out, well, now the Canadian government is doing it harder, and they're announcing a new ban of more guns. I actually got another link for Ian Runkle, because he is Canadian, and so I will defer to his expertise on all of that, and that he has likely been following the lists that are going on so that he can see what's new and what's not. And he actually was pointing out the fact that the list is not nearly as, they say it's added more than 300 makes and models, and he's like, it's not really quite that, because there's a lot of variations and things like that. But one of the things he said was there are some that are really, really dumb, like it's added the Browning M3 aircraft machine gun is one of the banned guns. And he's like, number one, it's already banned because it's a machine gun. Number two, who has one? And also the Walther WA-2000, which if you played a lot of video games, you know about. But if you haven't played a lot of video games, but shoot a lot of guns, you may not have heard about it, because there are very few in existence. And I talked with Caleb Daniels for his licensed troubleshooter, and the fact that he actually got a chance to handle in Germany the Walther WA-2000 used in the Living Daylights movie. But they're extremely rare rifles, and how many exist in Canada? 0 could be a very realistic number for that. So there's that. But Ian also notes that one of the things that it did do a lot of banning of was pistol caliber carbines, which were deemed, when Trudeau did the first crackdown on assault weapons, said, oh, well, you can still do, a lot of the sport shooting and things like that for, I don't know if they have IDPA, but they definitely have IPSC there. And people are saying, oh, you can use pistol caliber carbines instead of the handguns. Because, of course, note that they're not rounding up these guns, but by them being prohibited firearms, it means that if you owned them before the ban, you can continue to own them, but you cannot transfer them, including to next of kin. You cannot transport them except in a few very, very limited circumstances, and you cannot shoot them. You may, if you have a gun range on your property, you might be able to shoot it on your property, but
I wouldn't risk it.
I don't know. Yeah, but chances you probably can't.
Mhm.
You're probably just not allowed to discharge at all. So literally, you've just turned the gun into a paperweight with a massive amount of liability attached to it. So it is effectively a ban. But the statement is, you can still shoot IPSC, just use the pistol caliber carbine instead of a pistol. And now they've banned the carbine. So essentially, a lot of the Canadian shooting sports have really been crippled by this. Which again, note that I support the right for sport shooting. Yeah, no, they don't.
They also banned a whole bunch of rifles. Well, actually, I should say firearms chambered in .22 long rifle.
Mm-hmm.
And they're calling these assault weapons in .22 long.
And I don't know if you caught either in Ian's video or in this article, but the good news is they're going to offer to give these guns that are being turned in to the Ukrainians.
Yeah, because the Ukrainians really have a lot of use for, .22 long rifle weapons. They're absolutely fabulous for war fighting, I'm told. And also, Runkle pointed out that this is going to do terrible things for the Canadian public's perception of the Ukrainians and supporting them in their struggle. Because, if you're trying to get your populace to support something, stealing from them in order to support that thing, it's not going to make them love what you're doing. So, yeah, this is all sorts of bad decision. And at the top of the video, he actually talked about why. And he basically said this is them trying to get votes because they've tried other measures and they were not only not getting votes, but they were losing votes. And it looks like they're getting ready to lose an election. And so this is a last gasp in order to appeal to their base and get more votes. So there's the hope that when they lose, that the Conservative Party going into power will reverse all these gun laws. That would be nice. We shall see.
Yep. And also, this is one of those, obviously the 1994 assault weapons ban here in the United States, the whole reason why the term assault weapon was crafted was they couldn't ban all the guns because of all that. They couldn't ban handguns, which was original. The Brady campaign was the spearhead for that group, and they were originally Handgun Control International or Handgun Control Incorporated. They were a handgun ban group, but handguns are alarmingly popular here not even alarmingly. I understand why they're popular. Handguns are awesome, and they're very popular here, so people didn't want to ban them. And then you could say, we can't ban rifles because rifles are also very popular. Can't ban semi-auto rifles because those are very, very popular. But there's these weird things. Back then there weren't that many companies making AR-15s. There were not many people importing AKs and all that. So, we'll call them, and they look like military weapons. So we'll call them assault weapons. So it sounds like assault rifle, and we'll make people think that they're full auto and weapons of war. And get a ban, but the whole point was we got to comfort the people with their semi-auto duck guns or semi-auto deer rifles that we're not coming for those guns, and this is definitely coming after guns used for ducks and deer and shooting paper targets, and so the Tim Walz type people who might be quite friendly to gun control and all that, so long as they have their favorite pastime gun. These people may suddenly realize, you guys aren't fine with what I'm doing. You guys are actually directly hostile to all gun owners, which is the truth. So, and of course they're using the Ukraine war as kind of as a virtue signal. 'Cause none of these guns are going over to that war theater, because what do you want a commercial I mean, I don't even think they have AR-15, so it's one of those like they don't even have the supply chain to feed these guns. This isn't doing anything. So this is dumb, and that's Canada.
Oh, Canada.
Yes. All right. Now back to this side of the aisle, and this is as the person who wrote this article is as dumb as the Canadian gun laws are. This article is horrendously written, but it is an interesting story nonetheless on the police illegally selling restricted weapons, supplying crime. And they're kind of jumping all over the place with this, but essentially this reporter who knows very, very little about guns uncovered a number of instances where police were getting a hold of various firearms and then selling them on the open market for profit. We have something that I've certainly people are well aware of here in Massachusetts, where cops would buy off-roster handguns using department letterhead as, say, an off-duty or a courtroom carry gun, and then say, "Oh, I didn't like it," and then sell it for twice what they paid for it for a handy profit. As that's one of the ways you could get an off-roster firearm is through a police officer who has it as a personal duty weapon. But in those instances, it was people showing their license and doing it all through the Massachusetts registration. But I guess they weren't always doing it that way. And in the lead one, again, they talk about an M134 Gatlin style minigun. It's either a minigun or it's Gatlin style. It's a rotating barrel gun. But talking about somebody acquiring a GE minigun for, was it a private collector? I lost it on this one.
Well, I mean, okay, we're talking about the M134.
Yes.
It's literally at the top of the article. So, Adair, Iowa has a 3-person police department, and they asked, it says regulators. I don't know who they mean by regulators, but the department wanted to buy 90 machine guns, including the M134, for a 3-person police department policing a town of 794. And that is super sus.
Mm-hmm.
And so the thing that really got me about this article, because we've talked about how law enforcement buys off-roster guns and then sells them, and it's a side gig. But there's a quote here in the article, and it basically says that when the ATF investigates, they don't want to arrest law enforcement, and so they give them a warning.
Which is crazy common, the thin blue line, as they say. I know that actually one of my when I worked in the Observer program, one of the people that was one of the higher ups on it was a retired NIMS law enforcement officer. So the police officers that will make sure that fishermen are not catching and selling fish illegally, and other activities. So he was a retired cop, and so he had his retired badge with him. And one of my bosses said that he used to ride around with him to different ports, and he said the guy drove like an absolute maniac. He would be doing extremely high speeds, and they'd get pulled over all the time. And he said he would just reach into his pocket, pull out the badge, and toss it on the dash. And he said just about every time the officer would come in, look in, see him, see the badge, probably give a quick sniff to make sure that they weren't drinking or it wasn't anything that was going to come back to bite him, and then say, "All right, go ahead," and then just walk away.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, he was retired. It wasn't like he was doing it as a law enforcement officer. No, he was just speeding. So yeah, the key takeaway that I wanted to get from this is that number one, just how stupidly written this article is. Just go ahead and give it a read if you want. It's in the show notes, but also that every time gun control laws come through, the police are always exempted. Police officers have machine guns. You see the badge cam videos where they've got the 40 millimeter launchers and they're shooting beanbags at people. We can't buy one of those. You can't shoot beanbags out of a 40 millimeter gun at a home intruder if you wanted to have less than lethal, but still have a whole lot of oomph, because it's still a grenade launcher. You could still put a high explosive grenade in it. That's a destructive device. You need a tax stamp. So you could get one, but you need extra ATF paperwork. Police, they got it. They're perfectly fine going through. They can have short barreled stuff. They can have machine guns. In Massachusetts, they've got Glocks and they've got high capacity magazines and all that, even though we can't have it. And the statement is that, because police are more trustworthy.
Here we go. Yeah. I found it. I'm sorry. Were you?
Oh, no worries.
Okay. So here we go. According to interviews with half a dozen former ATF agents, several of them shared anecdotes about letting police departments off with warnings after repeatedly finding their service weapons in the hands of private citizens. The agents explained that prosecutors have been generally reluctant to charge these cases, and the Bureau stated that, quote, "it is our goal to educate, not investigate," end quote, according to a 2017 law enforcement memo. Another quote here: "We're not looking to prosecute fellow law enforcement officers," said Eric Hardin, former special agent in charge of the ATF's Los Angeles Field Division. So they're literally admitting that when police officers break the law or act in an appropriate manner by selling these off-roster guns in a very suspicious manner, they don't want to investigate, they don't want to prosecute. They'll just say, "Bad boy, don't do it."
And then, meanwhile, we've reported here on the show that a gun shop might fill out the paperwork wrong, and with just a simple mistake. Not like they did it completely wrong. No. They just a few clerical errors, and the ATF, rather than educate or correct, they just straight up seize the license. And so, this is not even-handed practice. So, it's frustrating and infuriating. All right, I think we can move on to some lighter-hearted stuff.
Well, I mean, this one, I guess, this next one, it isn't really lighthearted because it's about people getting robbed at gunpoint.
Yeah, it is. It's so there's this British band named Sports Team. I've never heard of them before. Don't know what type of music they do. Don't know if they're any good. But they were on tour in the United States. They were in California, where there's lots of gun control laws, very similar to the UK. And they were in a Starbucks grabbing some coffee, and somebody mentioned that their van was getting ripped off. And so they ran outside, and the people that were ripping off their vans had guns and pointed the guns at them. I think did it rob them as well? I'm trying to remember.
They did. Yep. So here's what happened. They were at like a Starbucks or something, and someone came in and said, your van's being robbed. And so the band ran out. And by the way, according to Wikipedia, Sports Team is an alt-rock band.
Okay.
And so they ran out to confront the people that were robbing their van. And at least one of the people that was committing the robbery pulled out a gun and basically said, go away or we'll shoot you. And Sports Team, I mean, they were unarmed, so wisely decided not to push the issue. None of their instruments or electronics were taken. They said that they were able to continue the tour. All that they lost were personal items, which is odd. I mean, you'd think that if you were robbing a van, you would go for the very expensive instruments. That's so strange. But I mean, it's California. What are you going to do?
Also, depending on how professional the thieves were, they might realize that stealing a professional rock band's guitar, like stealing a lead guitarist's guitar, might quickly draw some attention to you. It might be very traceable, and it could be something simple as you're not going to run away with an amp
True.
So it could have just been they were just taking the stuff that they could travel lightly with.
But
But
here's the kicker for this. When they called the police, sports team, the response was, submit an online report.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, here you are, you're a visitor in a foreign country, in a state that has these very stringent gun control laws. You get robbed by a criminal at gunpoint, and the police don't even show up. They just say, go to our website and fill out a form.
Comforting, isn't it?
Very.
This is also, stuff like this is also one of the reasons why when you have some of the defensive gun use, like the Gary Kleck study, where it says that the defensive gun uses are really, 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 really high, even though there's not that much evidence from them being physically reported, because stuff like this happens on somebody, was pounding on my door, or somebody, there was a road rage incident and somebody came charging at me and I pulled my gun and said, go away. And then some people just won't call the cops. They'll just leave. And if everyone just goes into their own corner, then that's the end of the story. But even if they do call the cops, who's to say it's going to actually get reported or recorded? All right. The last story that I've got listed here, this is really this is absolutely for lulz. And this is from Cam Edwards at Bearing Arms. And he's I think he's the lead editor there. So I suspect he was the one that also wrote this title. Gun control activists and failed pillow salesman still milling a run for DNC leadership. Well done, Cam. Well done. And that failed pillow salesman, if you didn't know, was I don't even know if he had a legal title with the company because it kind of never got off the ground. But this is David Hogg of the Good Pillow and the March for Our Lives. And he's contemplating running for some sort of DNC leadership. It's not really sure which.
Vice president.
Yeah. Is it okay? Because there's actually saying that there's multiple vice chairs. So I'm not sure which one are high up this is going to go. But David Hogg wants his name in lights for the Democrat Party. I don't know about you, Baron, but I think that would be a great idea because I don't like gun control, and having a gun control person like him in a prominent position and kind of a face of gun control will get a lot of people that hadn't really thought much about gun control go, well, if this guy likes it, then I hate it. Because David Hogg, he's got a way of convincing people, not in the way that he's trying to do. And I just wanted to say also, speaking of people, this is something that I forgot to do after the election. And I've just been looking for an excuse to do it. I forgot to mention the Montana governor's race on it. Because, of course, Ryan Busse was a former Kimber marketing director. And he was a marketing director in Kimber when they were producing 1911s that don't run. A lot of the jokes about 1911s jamming that you may have heard are either due to, military style ones that don't run on hollow points because they're designed just to feed ball ammo, or Kimbers. But he's a big gun control proponent, and he was going to run for the Democrat governor of Montana, and he got crushed. It was the incumbent governor won re-election, and he won it with just under 60% of the vote. And Ryan Busse got 38.6%. And there was a third independent also ran that got 2.5%. So that's a crushing defeat. And so I just wanted to point and laugh because he's a anti-gun person and really not that great a guy, and I was happy to see that he didn't win.
Are you going to be sad that you don't get to talk about Busse anymore?
I mean, I don't know if he'll go away. I mean, he's we know about him because he likes mugging for the cameras. So we will see. I don't think he's going to go away. I think he's going to. It's like David Hogg. We've been talking about David Hogg for how long now? Like he's not going away either. I think this is not the last we've seen of Ryan Bussey
since 2018. That's how long we've been talking about David Hogg.
That's how long we've been talking about David Hogg.
Yep.
All right. Well, time to get into the segments, and switching back to self-defense, Xander dives into a bit of mindset of self-protection.
Welcome to Independent Thoughts with yours truly, Xander Opal. As I look to the side as I record this, I see the menorah my friend David gifted me. Recent news articles and discussions have me thinking of things that are politics-based and safety-based. So much trouble comes from an imbalance of strength, or a perceived imbalance of strength. Criminals seek to take advantage of people who appear weak, who can't fight back. Governments who wish to take resources ensure that their targets are weak, or weaken their targets first. Too often, no is just a meaningless noise without something to back it up. If the target is lucky, the aggressor is well-meaning but misinformed, and will back off before things get kinetic, and hopefully things can be worked out to the satisfaction of all parties. Other times, the disparity is so great, the victims are rapidly overrun. People become victims to the point that they make sure that criminals can rifle through their vehicles just so nothing gets broken. Or they get moved to other locations, their lives destroyed for health and safety. Obviously, not for that of the victims. Places like New York attempt to disarm anyone and everyone in an attempt to put people on an even footing, or at least to give the government the upper hand. Yet, it just creates an imbalance of power. Look at the physical differences between folks such as myself or Oddball and folks like Aaron and Weer'd. On the one side, massively physical, masculine folks. On the other side, relatively small and average folks. I'm sad to say that I've encountered people that consider me scary or a threat just because I'm big and solid. On the flip side, someone who notices how I walk with a limp would consider me a good target for robbery. My bad knee means I can't run or sprint these days. I have no effective means of retreat, unless I'm already in a vehicle. I'd much rather not get violent. I'd much rather work things out to mutual satisfaction, or at worst mutual avoidance if someone can't stand people like me. I'd rather not go play Ukrainian farmer or reenact the Battle of Athens. I enjoy just being a good, if odd, neighbor. I can accept things not going my way at the ballot box, as long as my voice was heard. Heck, I'm good if you hear this bit right now, because you pressed skip a couple times as soon as my segment was introduced. I will say this at the last, though, as was inscribed on a Colt revolver over a century ago. Be not afraid of any man who walks beneath the skies. Though you be weak and he be strong, I will equalize. Have fun, be safe. I hope I gave you something to think about.
Aaron, did he call me dainty?
No, he called you normal-sized.
I mean, I'm 6 feet tall, so I'm pretty much just a little bit taller than the national average of height. So I could see that. But Xander's like the same height as me, too. He's just bigger.
Are you sure?
Way stronger.
He's tall.
I think he is. He's a little bit taller. It was Miles, who actually I always thought was taller than me. Just he seems bigger than he is, but we were just standing next to each other. He's like, no, I'm 6 feet tall. And I'm like, really?
But I mean,
no, you're taller than me.
But like for reference, I'm 5'4", so most men are taller than I am, and most of them are like way taller than I am. It's like, oh, how's the weather up there? But Xander, I mean, I feel like he's like, 6'4" or something, a good foot taller than I am, and very imposing.
He's 18 feet tall.
He's a big boy.
Yes.
But no, he didn't call you dainty.
And on the whole, essentially the interview that one might have with an attacker, I was talking with some Pink Pistols members about situational awareness, and I give this advice to everybody, which is when you're out and about, make eye contact with everyone you cross paths with. Number one, it's going to show them that your nose isn't buried in your phone and that you're actually aware of your surroundings. And I got to say that the people that walk around with their nose buried in their phone or looking down at the ground and not looking around are probably going to attract some attention that they don't want on a long enough timeline. But also, I find that just by looking in someone's eyes, you can very quickly see their motivation, and you can really learn a lot about somebody just with what their eyes are doing. And as I say to people, you might bump into someone who's an expert thief or a dangerous fighter or a cold-blooded killer, but they're not going to be all of those things and an expert actor. So the fact that you would look at them and not immediately get the heebie-jeebies of going, this person is up to something, is low. But a couple of the members of Boston Pink Pistols are on the autism spectrum, and they mentioned that eye contact isn't easy. And so, that was kind of a blind spot, though a few people noted that, yeah, you could still pick up a lot of body language, even if you're not making direct eye contact. It's the window of the souls is exactly what I kind of loop into, but there's other ways. But either way, keep an eye on people and see what they're doing. Is a great way to avoid unwanted contact.
If you've been praying for a solution on dry firing, David's here to talk about the Mantis X.
Hi, and welcome to Gun Lovers and Other Strangers. We've often talked about the importance of shooting practice, particularly dry fire practice, for improving skills, accuracy, and confidence. Erin has reviewed several dry fire systems on her blog. In this segment, I'd like to talk about the Mantis X3 dry fire unit, or as they call it, Shooting Performance System. This is yet another fruit from the Gun Owners of America Goals event earlier this year. To reiterate my previous statements, I highly recommend any of our listeners who can attend next year. On to the review. The Mantis X3 is a small rechargeable unit that can be attached to any handgun or rifle that has a Picatinny accessory rail. It works by detecting the amount and direction of movement during trigger pull. In conjunction with a downloadable app, it enables dry and live fire practice whenever and wherever the owner desires. Weighing in at just under half an ounce, or 13 grams, and measuring 1.3 inches long, 1 inch wide, and 3/4 of an inch high, the Mantis X3 is unlikely to affect the handling characteristics of any firearm, with the possible exception being if the user wants to use it in conjunction with holster draw drills. Setup of the Mantis X3 is extremely simple. Download the app, attach the unit to the firearm, connect the device to the app via Bluetooth, start practicing. The Mantis X app is available from the Apple, Samsung, and Google Play stores and will work on nearly any mobile device that has Bluetooth capability. The unit I received is occasionally a little finicky syncing to my phone. I don't know which side of the connection string is causing this, but I haven't run into that issue with other Bluetooth items on the phone or when connecting the Mantis to my tablet. Once the app is installed and connected, a variety of options for firearm type, shooting hand, mount location, unit orientation, and even live or dry fire modes can be selected. There are a number of training drills built into the app. Some are timed, but many are not. To use the Mantis X for dry fire practice, go through the setup steps I mentioned earlier, select a convenient target or prop the tablet or smartphone up at an appropriate distance, double check to make sure the firearm is unloaded, and start the selected drill. Since the Mantis doesn't rely on a laser or something similar, any aiming point will do. But I like using the provided on-screen target for dry fire drills. I installed the app on both my smartphone and tablet. I use the former when practicing at shorter ranges and the latter when I have more space to work with. There are plenty of stands available through retail sources to hold either a phone or tablet in good positions for practice. All sorts of phone stand 3D print files can be found on sites such as Thingiverse, and in a pinch, a plate stand works as well. As I've mentioned, there are a bunch of practice options included with the app. Mostly, I've been focusing on the basic marksmanship open training drill. This is untimed accuracy practice, any number of shots at any pace. Unfortunately, the only pistols in my collection with rails are both striker-fired, which currently makes the timed fire drills less useful for me. I've also found if I rack the slide too sharply to reset the pistol, the Mantis unit will occasionally register the slide returning to battery as another shot. Obviously, this doesn't do my accuracy scores any favors. Yet even with all that, I found after only a few training sessions my sight picture was steadier and my trigger pull was smoother. I just need to make sure I put aside regular blocks of time for additional practice. While less frequently, I have also utilized live fire drills as well, mostly the shot timer. When activated, there will be a 2 to 5 second delay, then a buzzer will sound. At this point, I can fire any number of shots at any pace. Settings can be changed to fit the shooter's preference for delay and number of shots per string, as well as a few other options. I've run this drill with both slow, considered fire as well as rapid fire. It's certainly more fun than dry fire drills, but it is limited to when I have time and accessibility for live fire. Not to mention the additional expense in ammunition. Once a practice session is done, the Mantis X provides the user with a variety of feedback details to review. Obviously accuracy, but also elapsed time between trigger pulls, overall time, muzzle movement, and even firearm cant. In addition, it has the ability to compare multiple sessions over time, so we have a clear metric of our improvement or any places we need to focus our efforts. The Mantis X also has a weekly shot goal. When reached, it will play a fanfare and display confetti drifting down the screen to mark the shooter's achievement. A nice fun feature. As far as dry fire training systems go, the Mantis X3 has a number of major benefits. It's small, lightweight, and rechargeable. Installation and use are very simple, and the app is quite versatile and user-friendly. It's also usable in both live and dry fire practice. Even better, it allows us to practice with our own firearms, so there's no need to adapt to new weight, balance, or trigger pull. The primary negative element is one common to nearly all dry fire training solutions and is not the fault of the unit. Since the Mantis X3 reacts to a hammer or striker releasing, it requires recocking the action after each shot. Unless shooting a double-action firearm, this will slow down practice and add some amount of frustration. Even a single-action pistol with an exposed hammer will add extra steps to the training process. To be clear, this is not the fault of the Mantis unit, but simply a technological reality. There are products on the market to help ameliorate this challenge, such as those offered by Dry Fire Mag, a product I hope to get an example of for testing and evaluation in the future. Another aspect of the product that some people may object to is the necessity for a smartphone or tablet. Considering the vast majority of people today are likely to already own one or both, this is probably not a deal breaker for most potential users. The Mantis X3 comes well packaged in a foam-lined zippered hard pouch and includes the unit, a charging cable, USB-A to micro-B, and a printed quick start guide. More detailed instructions and information are available through the app or downloadable from the website. Current MSRP for the Mantis X3 is $169. Nice. If ordered directly from Mantis, 2 to 5 day domestic shipping is free. For firearms without a Picatinny rail, various adapters are available through the Mantis website. In conclusion, the Mantis X3 is an excellent unit for improving sight alignment, trigger control, and confidence. It could be especially useful for anyone who travels frequently, as they would be able to practice in their hotel room. I give the Mantis X3 an easy 9 out of 10. Practice safe, practice often.
By day, he's a brilliant man of science. But when night falls, he becomes America's greatest superhero.
Who are you?
Call me the Mantis.
That about wraps up this segment. If you have any questions for me or suggestions for future segments, or a comment on a past segment, please post them on the Assorted Calibers Podcast Facebook or MeWe pages, and Aaron or Weer'd will make sure I see them. I'm also a contributor on the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. Finally, I'm a published author, and books with my stories can be found on Amazon under the names Brenna Bach and David Bach. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. I'm David, and this is Gun Lovers and Other Strangers.
Yeah, actually, David had forgotten, but Egghead did a review on the Mantis X, though I've got to imagine that that version, that was like 5 years ago. They've come a long way since then, I would have to imagine, because of the electronics. But it is a really, really cool system, because it does... nothing beats practice where you're not using ammo.
Mm-hmm.
Though the big frustration is, there are very few guns that are just naturally good at dry fire as well. Because if it's a single action pistol or revolver, single action revolver, that's how you work them. But a single action pistol, that hammer's not going to be not going to be going back on its own. And the striker fires are just so miserable to do dry fire on. I find that when I'm doing dry fire with a striker fired pistol, it just, I don't stick with it very long. I do most of my dry fire work with revolvers.
I really like the Mantis just from the way it looks, but I mean, first of all, it's expensive, and we all know how cheap I am. But there's also the fact that it mounts on an accessory rail, and none of my carry pistols have had an accessory rail, so it wouldn't do me any good. And I'm annoyed by that. Hey, Gunco.
Even your new, even your new Ruger?
Correct. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the only pistol that I have that has a rail is that 45 M&P that you got me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great. It's too big for me to conceal carry on a regular basis. So why would I spend the money on a Mantis? You're training for a pistol that I don't carry. So...
Yeah, that's true. And I'm looking at a picture of the Max 9. I thought it had a rail because I didn't really look too close at it because I already had a P60 365 when this thing came out, and that does have a rail. I don't know if that'll fit on it. A lot of these like subcompacts, not much fits on it, and that's literally like one of my only guns that has a rail too. I don't have a lot of railed handguns either. And may I add that I was when David and I were David was talking about doing this segment. I was saying every time I hear Mantis X, I always think of the Fox TV series Mantis in that. And David's like, oh my god, I loved that show. And very much I've frequently talked about how I fell in love with Iron Man comics in the 80s when Tony Stark, they had a whole subplot where Tony Stark was getting some neurodegeneration from the suit and was stuck in a wheelchair. And so he only had the ability to walk when he was in the suit. And I just loved the idea of a paralyzed man becoming a superhero. And that was the whole subplot of the Mantis series. That was the plot of the Mantis series, was he was a scientist developing a way to cure his him being paralyzed, and realized that, oh, not only can I walk, but I'm also superhuman. So it was a fun show.
Relevant to very, very little here. I didn't watch Mantis, but when I saw that preview, it reminded me of another cheesy thing that I watched in the 90s called Super Force, which it aired on Saturday mornings. Okay, so it basically was like bit like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers in the demographic that it catered to. And Super Force is about a former astronaut turned cop who uses a highly advanced powered exoskeleton and motorcycle to fight crime in the city of Metroplex during the future year of 2020. And it's very, very cheesy. About the only thing that's really noteworthy about it is that it starred Patrick Macnee, who was the British Avenger, John Steed. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, you could tell, one, that Macnee needed money, and two, they didn't have a lot of money because he only appeared in like the first episode, and then he died, but they like uploaded him to AI, and so Macnee did the voice for the character, but they pixelated out his character, so it wasn't even like Max Headroom style. It was just, a very blobby shape. And I don't really know why I remember that, but I do.
Oh, if you could throw like a trailer or just some clip for that in the show notes, that'll make everyone's day, I think.
Sure.
It'll certainly make mine. Well, if you're thinking about self-defense, you're likely thinking about what if it doesn't go well. But also, not going well doesn't always mean lost a gunfight. Could be that you were operating heavy machine while listening to the ACP blooper reel. But, if you end up not surviving something. Now what?
Hello all in ACP land, it's me, Tiny, with another edition of Deep Thoughts from the Land of Rocks and Cows. Now this segment's going to be not very fun, but I think it's something important, and I've had some things that's happened in my personal life that's made me want to bring it up to everyone else. This is going to be having a plan for a catastrophic emergency if you pass away, so that your significant other, friends and family know your wishes and can, like if you're traveling, get home. If you have all your travel itinerary on your phone and you're the one that passes away, if your significant other can't get on the phone to access their plane tickets to get home, that's not going to be fun. So there's a lot of resources out there. At my place of business where I work, we're actually getting new life insurance, and one of the perks is that they actually have a will you can set up through them for free. Otherwise, I'd say there's websites that can help you, or you can contact a lawyer. You know, it's not a very fun thing to think about, but I think it's important because you never know what's going to happen. And you never want the government to be the ones deciding on what happens with your stuff. I mean, a lot of us, we have like online friends and stuff. If our families don't even know about them, how can we give things to them or let them know if something happens to you when, you know, your family doesn't even know to tell them? I'm kind of rambling here because this is just kind of a shoot from the hip segment. But yeah, I think everyone needs to get a plan together and have discussions. It's not very fun. I've said that many times. But yeah, this is just short and sweet, and wanted to tell people that this is something that really should be done so that the government isn't the ones distributing your stuff and deciding the way things go. If something catastrophic were to happen to you or your loved ones, and it also takes a load off of your loved ones if you do pass, and then they don't have to be the ones planning everything if you have everything planned already.
Yeah, I had to save this one for the end of the show because this is a heavy one.
Yeah, well, I don't think this will go into the blooper reel, but after I listened to Tiny's segment, when I got on the Discord and he was there in the channel, I had to ask him, dude, are you okay? Because, you know, it's a really heavy subject, and he was rambling, and, you know, this is the voice of a man who has gotten really bad news and is trying to process it, and it was just like, okay, wellness check, are you okay? Do you need to talk to somebody? I'm here. It didn't exactly scare me, but it was just like, okay, I've got to check on him. So
you did the good friend thing, Aaron.
Well, I wasn't saying that in order to get kudos. It was just
no, but I am saying that because I am saying that, you know, people out there, you should do the exact same thing. Is just say, how are you doing? Are you okay? And that was a great thing for you to do, Aaron. And we should all lead by that example. It was what I was trying to get at. And then to get into Tiny's subject, I will say that if you have next of kin or an estate of any great value, get yourself a will and definitely try to talk to a lawyer about that will, because they have seen stuff go wrong, and so they will tell you pitfalls to avoid. And I will say that there are a few abandoned houses. One of them recently sold and has been renovated and is beautiful, but there were a couple of houses that are just rotting into the ground, just sitting there vacant. And I live in a pretty nice neighborhood, and those houses are worth a lot of money, and yet they're just falling apart. And I guarantee the reason is they're tied up in probate, because somebody either left some ambiguity in a will or something, and people are in court fighting over who gets what or how much of that property. And so, yeah, don't leave, you know, discourse behind. when you go. And Tiny made a great point, as I do wonder about all you folks on the internet if something was just to suddenly happen to me. I mean, as a general rule, pretty much everybody here in the ACP crew knows enough about me that they can figure some stuff out if I suddenly am incommunicado. And there's people that I'm regularly talking to, like Ryan and all that there'd be a game of telephone that people would get back as far as that. But it's definitely something that I think about.
Mm.
So I'm choosing to be immortal, Aaron.
Okay, well, if it's something you can choose.
You know who else chooses to be immortal, Aaron?
These segues are getting more and more of a stretch.
If you don't do it right, it's not as hard.
Something, our listeners.
Our listeners! Thank you, each and every one of our listeners. We really do appreciate you listening to the show. And we don't just appreciate the patrons, but we do really appreciate the patrons as well, because they help keep the lights on. They help defer the costs that we need to do to keep this show running. So we also thank the patrons. And hey, guess what? That's not a tip jar. We're selling products. We've got, the ACP blooper reels. We've got early release of the podcast. We've got the ACP film tracks, and we've got the ACP mag dump. So if you want any of those, go on over to Patreon and sign up.
Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts and Pocket Casts. Subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends, both online and off.
And you can vote for us on the Gundies if you're so inclined. And you get more from me at my blog, which is weerdworld.com. That's weerdworld.com. And hear me weekly on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
And you can get more from me at Linktree/Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Aaron Paulette, all one word.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
So Weer'd has chosen to be my immortal, but personally, I want you to bring me to life. Our Evanescence song titles are assorted, and so's our podcast. Good night, everyone.
Good night. It's musical.